The Model Shop live scale modeling show is brought to you by Tenant Controls, makers of lighting kits, soundboards, and more. Tenant Controls brings your models to life. And by HDA ModelWorks, suppliers of scale model lighting products, detail parts, and complete model kits. Visit HDAModelWorks.com today. Well, hello out there, everybody. Boyd here with you, and welcome to another episode of the Model Shop live scale modeling show, coming to you live from our shop here in San Antonio. Glad to be with you guys again this week. We're getting a little bit of winter weather down here in southern Texas, which is unusual. We actually had some snow stick on the ground here the last couple days, so haven't seen that in about 15 years, so pretty amazing. I hope you guys are a little bit warmer where you're at. We're going to have a nice little show in store for you guys tonight. We're going to start off taking a look at the community page. We've kicked off our Star Wars group build, started a couple of weeks ago, and we've already got a lot of activity going on that, over at our site on that, with a lot of people joining in. So we're going to go over there and get a nice little update. We're going to actually go on the model bench tonight for a lot of our show. I'm working on a display base for one of the Enterprise models that I built, and I'm actually going to install a soundboard and sound system into the base of this tonight, and we're going to show you. A couple of episodes ago we showed you how to do some programming and set up one of the soundboards, so tonight we're going to take you through step by step setting that up and then actually installing it in the base and some of the parts that we use and how to wire it and everything. So a lot of those questions have came in from you guys over the last couple of months, interested in that, so we thought we'd take you through that tonight. Just going through some of my notes, we got in our model news announcements tonight, we've got to share some information with you guys about a new kit coming out from Mobius Models. A lot of us have been waiting for it. It's the Discovery 1 from the original 2001 A Space Odyssey. It's a fantastic model kit in 1/44 scale. It's supposed to be shipping sometime from mid-December on, so a lot of us are looking forward to that. We'll have a look at that here in a little bit, and we'll head over to our community and get all our updates on all the work that's going on over there. It's really getting exciting. A lot of Star Wars stuff going on. Looking forward to that. We're going to run that all the way through February. I just want to mention real quick that we talked about with the Star Wars group build last episode that we were going to do some live hangouts during our group build, which runs through February. So I'm going to post a schedule on the Model Shop page, and that will be listing all the dates that we're going to do the live hangouts. Now we're talking about probably doing those on Saturday nights rather than Sunday nights. So this will be the last show until the new year for the regular model shop show. We're going to be just doing some hangouts starting next Saturday night, and I'll put that up on our community board so you guys can check it out. So if you're going to be at the bench working on your Star Wars stuff, we'd love to have you in the hangout with us. It'd be great to get everybody together and give updates on what we're working on and show everything that we're techniques and tips that we could share with the build of the model along the way with our other viewers. So that would be great, and I'm really looking forward to that. And we'll carry that through until the first of the year, and then we'll go back to the regular show, starting off a new season. So I'm looking forward to that. I want to mention another really fun thing that's going on too. As many of you guys know, and part of the community, a lot of us are getting together in February for the Fiesta Model Show that they hold down here in San Antonio. That's on February 17th of this year. And a bunch of the people from the chat group that you guys are all used to hanging out with in here are going to be down here for that. We're all going to have a nice get-together and meet and check out the model show. And then after that, we're going to head back over here to the shop and try to fit as many people as we can in here. And we're going to do a live, what I'm calling live show after the show. So we're going to kind of have a roundtable discussion about what everybody thought of the model show, and what it's like to be here in the shop and everything, and be on the show live with the rest of our audience. So I'm looking forward to that. Got quite a few people who have responded that are going to be coming down this year, so it should be a lot of fun. We're going to have a nice dinner and go out and just hang out and talk about models and have fun at the model show. What a great weekend that'll be. So I'm looking forward to that. Just going over my notes here. Went over the hangouts. So yeah, we're going to take a quick break then, and we'll come right back, and we're going to go over to the community model shop Google community board and have a look at what's going on there, and get some updates on some of the Star Wars. Maybe that'll give you guys some ideas out there that haven't picked out a kit yet and you want to join in on our group build. All are welcome. And then we'll cover all that and look at some other updates, talk about some new kits that are coming out. And then we're going to be on the bench for the rest of the show tonight. We got to have a little, might be a little bit of a long section, but it should be fun. We're going to take you through, for those of you interested in learning how to do this, we're going to solder all of our wires in here and hook everything up and make this ready to connect to our Enterprise model that we're going to mount on this stand, so I can show you how to do that. And this same technique will be useful to you for any kind of a base you're working on where you want to put one of these programmable sound boards into that. So be right back with that, everybody. Stand by. Okay, back with you again, everybody, and we're going to head over to the Model Shop Google community now and get some updates on what's been going on. So let me pull this up for you guys real quick. And here we are at the community site where, as you can see, Star Wars is the theme of the day. We kicked off our Star Wars group build a couple of weeks ago now. We've got the little looking for you poster, hoping you guys will join in on this. And it's just a lot of fun. It's not any kind of a contest of any kind. We're talking about maybe giving away some door prizes at the end of it. I'm trying to put together some stuff on that, so we'll have more to announce on that. But nothing for any kind of judging or anything like that. It's just a fun group build where we're all working on a Star Wars related project. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what people come up with again, just like our Halloween group build we came off of. A lot of participation in that, and as we can see here, just generally scrolling down, we got a lot of cool stuff going on already. So let's hop in and have a look. We've got Mark Shue here. Looks like, let's pull this up and see what he's working on. I think this is a Millennium Falcon. Looks like the cockpit there. That's going to be a popular subject for our Star Wars group build. This is probably one of the Bondi kits. Looks like he's doing some type of a diorama for it. Pretty cool stuff there. And we have Roy Outsider 238 working on the BB-8. Let's have a look at this. Wow, nice weathering going on there. Really detailed little model. Pretty cool effect there going on. Beautiful job on this. You can see it's a pretty detailed kit with a pretty high parts count, fairly large scale. So really nice kit. Bondi's putting out some incredible stuff from for the Star Wars movies and all the other related stuff. It's just an unlimited amount of kits. That's why we thought it'd be a popular group build, because there's so many kits available in all kinds of price ranges to fit your budget. So hopefully you can find something to work on. And a lot of these kits aren't very big either. You can, if you don't have a lot of storage space, you can build one of these little X-Wings or TIE fighters and put it on your desk. We've got Omar doing a diorama here of the famous scene at the end of the original Star Wars A New Hope, the battle between Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. As you can see, Omar's gathering up some detail parts for his trench scene here. Really looking forward to that one. We have lots of other work going on too. John Hunt working on a, let's see what he's got going on here. Some awesome detail there. Super nice weathering. I love it when outside photographs are done of models. It just gives it such a extra realistic look, and it fits in with the scale and everything. That's pretty cool. Nice photography there too. Lee Chambers working on a rig here. This is the 124 Scania 730 V8 final reveal shot. So he's finished the model up, and beautiful paint job on that. Lots of work going on there. Just the right weathering effects, not too dirty, just shows a little bit of use on it, just gives it that extra realistic look. Very nice job on that. Of course, we have the Tom Daniel group build that's going on that I talked about for our last show. I want to put another shout out there for that. It's being hosted this year by Dirk Pitt and Chris Cortell. You can find out more information about that over at Chris Cortell's Classic Plastic 101 Hangout on Facebook, or over at Dirk Pitt's YouTube channel. And if you're interested in joining in on that, just watch Dirk's instructional video he's got there. He'll ask you to send him an email just letting him know that you're joining up, and then you can post pictures of your progress or your final model build pictures over at the Classic Plastic Hangout page. And then Dirk mentioned in his video that he's going to be putting together a slideshow presentation at the end of the group build. That'll be a few months down the road, I'm assuming, but he's going to present that on his channel, so it'll be a good place to see all that work come together. So check it out, guys. Really cool. You can see Mike Kovac here's taking part in that. He's doing the classic Cop Out by Monogram, which is an old Tom Daniel design. Great little kit. Getting the body worked up here. Looks like Mike's going to do some original type paint work on this, something a little bit different than the way you usually see this model built, so that should be interesting to follow along with. And here from our roving reporter, Gadgetron 3000, always with some model news. We really appreciate that. He posts a lot on our group page here. Round 2 has just announced their newest model kit release, which will be sometime in 2018, the Space 1999 Hawk. That was kind of a seldom seen ship on the original Space 1999 television series. It's kind of a variation of the Eagle. A lot of fans really like this design. It looks a little bit more menacing and streamlined than a standard Eagle, but pretty cool. Looks like a fairly detailed kit. I'm not sure about the scale of this or anything. And again, this is just a rough mock-up of the model. It'll probably be a lot cleaner looking when they get it ready for final release. So you can look forward to that sometime in 2018. And speaking of model kit releases, before I get down here any further, let me share with you guys the other modeling news I wanted to share with you, which is this kit here that you're seeing on the screen. This is the Mobius 1/144th scale 2001 Space Odyssey Discovery X1. This is an all-time classic that a lot of us in the sci-fi modeling genre that are interested in it have been waiting for this kit, or a kit like this, for a long time. There's been several resin incarnations of this kit. A lot of them were really nice, but they were hard to come by. And the scale was kind of, either, for me, wanting one of these, the scale was either a little bit too small or a little bit too big. I think they ranged from, like, the biggest kit from Atomic City Models, I think, was around 66 inches, which is huge. And then you had down to, I think, 24 inches or 30 inches. And this model comes in just a little bit in between that. I think either 32 or 34 inches, something like that. And it's a really detailed, accurate kit. High parts count kit. You're going to be surprised when you see how many parts are included in this kit. Basically, if you look at my mouse pointer here, building this spinal cargo pod area, is each one of these cargo pod pieces are several pieces to build. So, and all the detail on the spine and everything. But there's some nice photo etch parts already out available for this model kit from Paragraphics, as we're going to see here in just a few minutes. We're going to head over to the HDA ModelWorks website and look at some of the stuff that they have there too, for when we talk about our working on our base here in a minute, where we get some of the switches and stuff. But there's already some great parts out for this kit, and it's supposed to be released sometime mid to late December, so a lot of us are chomping at the bit. Just wanted to mention that Jerry has going to have this kit available at his website, hdamodelworks.com, and if you look at the price he's got there, it's looks like a really good price with good shipping and everything. So that's where I'm going to be getting one of my kit from. Can't wait to get my hands on it. It really looks awesome. Something we've waited for a long time. So just wanted to share that with you guys. And we'll head back over to the screen page here. And here we are. Hopefully I did that right. So rolling on down the line here further, we've got some armor work going on by Dan Gilchrist, which is, let's see, he's got some, I think these are Russian tanks if I'm not mistaken. Doesn't say they're in the title. Let's see if we can tell. I'm not an armor expert, but we've got a couple of despicable shop helpers along the line there. Pretty cool. I think that is some kind of a Russian tank, but I could be wrong. Somebody could probably correct me on that, or Don might be watching and could tell everybody what this actually is. I don't see it in the title there, but you can see beautiful work. This is what you do a lot on your armor building. You start off with, basically a clean paintwork and detail, and then you go into your weathering on top of that. That's how you get that realistic, layered look. And I learned a lot about that from checking out a lot of armor builds, and there's a lot of really good armor building YouTube channels out there, so you can learn all about that too. But you can see he's putting in all the detail here, starting to do a little bit of shading. Pretty cool stuff. Got some Star Wars stuff going on here, a couple of TIE fighters. Dale Anderson joining in on the fun with a couple of kits. Looks like he's got the Darth Vader's TIE fighter there, an X-Wing, and I can't quite tell what this is. Let's see if we can make it bigger here and see. An A-Wing, okay. Pretty cool. Doing a little bit different paint job on these. Of course, again, mentioned the over at the Sci-Fi Fantasy community. That's an awesome community to be a part of as well, run by Kenny Conklin over there. They've got their Model of the Year contest started. It runs, I believe, until January or the first week of January, somewhere around there is when it ends. So if you've got a model that you've recently built, sci-fi related, or you can head over to Kenny's Sci-Fi Fantasy site and check that out and find out about all the different categories. There's going to be more than just sci-fi ships this year or sci-fi objects. I believe they've got separate categories for figures and dioramas and a bunch of cool stuff. So if you've got some work that you completed the last year, or if you've got something you're just about ready to finish, put it up over there. A lot of people enjoy seeing all the work displayed in one place. So put your entry in over there and join in on the fun. There's some beautiful work going on over there. Some examples of some incredible imagination and creativity. Again, that's what I really enjoy about these communities, is seeing what everybody does and the effort that's put in. So check it out, guys. We've got T Commando working on an NX-01. Our good friend Armando working on the Millennium Falcon diorama he's working on from the scene from the Star Wars movie where it's skimming over the desert with a couple of TIE fighters chasing it, so that'll be pretty cool. Here's the actual kit. Yeah, it's I think this is a kit that we were looking at earlier from Don, T55. I think that's a Russian kit. Don't get, like I said, I'm not an armor expert. I know my Tigers, my Shermans, and a few of those kind of mainstream ones, but some of the other ones I'm not up on too much. But beautiful job on that. Rob Pauza here been giving updates on this Star Destroyer. This is the big Star Destroyer kit, the 1/2700 scale, available from Zvezda, Russia, or from Revell, Germany, and just a beautiful kit. And he's done some fantastic work here, which I was really impressed with the creating, using a 3D printer to create a sort of a cradle here for his control board, which he'll be operating all of his effects with on the model. And then he's got kind of a dual purpose thing going on here where he's using that same system to mount all the LED lighting that he's going to be using to light the inside of the ship. And then I believe he's just going to be passing fiber optic strands, drill holes along the perimeter of the hull here, and wherever they poke through, this light will pick it up. And it's a different method than using a couple of single LED emitters in here somewhere and connecting all the fibers to one group of emitters. I'm kind of more in favor of this method here, and a lot of the similar plans, not to quite to this extreme as what I had in mind for building mine, with laying down some LEDs inside and stuff like that. But this is just really creative. You can see he's got some custom work going on in the back here for wiring up the engine lights. These are the new programmable LEDs, which are, I think, going to be more and more trendy as they become available, smaller and a wider range of applications. But for now, it's really promising technology. You can see the base he's working on for this. Everything's coming together really nice. Just a super clean layout that he's got going on there. Really looks good. So thanks for sharing that with us, and everybody's following along with that one. Very interesting. Chris Colvin here is also working on a Star Destroyer. Here's a model that I did for the Tom Daniel group build, the old Fire Iron kit. Got Clint Llewellyn finished up his Fly figure. T Commando discussing here on his own lighting and motor effect he's creating for the NX-01, explaining how he's doing that. Beautiful classic Ford engine model that someone did here, Hugo Vasquez. This might be, I'm trying to think, it might be like 1/4 scale, old dual overhead cam Ford engine, or maybe it's a single overhead cam. It's kind of hard to tell in that picture, but a rare engine from back in those days. Another model kit announcement, the Grim Reaper from Mobius. I'm sure that's going to be a popular one for next year's Halloween group build. Looks like a pretty cool kit. Dennis Statler going to do the C-3PO and possibly the R2-D2 models for the Star Wars group build. Ken Spriggs, 1/48 scale snow speeder, Bondi. Little mini diorama. Let's get a close-up look at that. Very cool. These are great little kits from Bondi. They build out pretty fast and they just look really, really nice when they're finished. Very accurate. Chris Colvin with more beauty shots of his Star Destroyer with some fiber optic lighting installed. The Star Wars Bondi AT-AT kit, which this particular AT-AT is supposedly modeled more after the way it appeared in the more recent movies. There's some subtle changes on it versus the way it looked in Empire Strikes Back, but really, really cool kit. Very popular kit. It actually builds out to pretty good size, so if you don't have a whole lot of room, you might want to look at something a little bit smaller because that guy builds up pretty big. Tagamo Model Works working on the new perfect grade Millennium Falcon from Bondi. Everybody's really excited about that kit. And Aussie Trekkie doing more work on his 172 scale U-boat, doing all the photo etch detail and weathering. Look at this work, guys. It's really great. It's just really cool to check that out. And Scott's really patient, working on every detail. He's doing these to like a museum quality standard on these models, guys. It's a lot of painstaking work, and it's really interesting to follow along with it. Check Scott's videos out on YouTube under Aussie Trekkie, and his work is very excellent to watch, but very instructional as well. I highly recommend it if you want to learn about photo etch, installing photo etch detail and doing weathering and things like that on military models. Here you can see a really nice shot of the interior of Rob's Star Destroyer again. That's just a really clean looking setup in there. It's pretty cool. Shows you what you can do, and I'm a big believer in 3D printers being a big part of modeling in the future. I envision modeling in the next 15 to 20 years where there really won't even be that many physical model kits anymore. It'll be just all in a catalog under files, and you'll pay to download the files to get the kit, and you'll print the parts yourself. And I think that's kind of where the it saves the companies of having to actually have a factory to make everything, and you'll see a lot more. They could focus more on time on designing new kits with 3D modeling work instead of physically producing the kits and then let everybody print it. As the quality of 3D printers goes up as well, that's going to make a big difference and they become a lot more affordable. I just kind of think that's the way we're going to see it move in the next 15 years or so. But here's some more Star Wars, a Darth Vader figure from Scott Thompson. An ATST from Todd Millette for the Star Wars group build. We're going to have a lot of participation in this. I'm only skimming over some of them, but there were many more than we even for what we had for the Halloween group build at this point, so it's going to be pretty big. John Hunt with the ATTE Walker. I believe these are his final pictures. I've got to mark this one so I can put those in the slideshow. We will be doing a slideshow presentation of all the models at the end on a special show sometime in February when we wrap this up. Murphy Peoples got a really impressive looking new paint holder stand there, which I'm interested in getting something like that myself. We can never never organize our paints enough, right, guys? They get scattered all over the place. As you can see, lots of varied subjects here going on in the community, which is always awesome to see that. We are not just about sci-fi. This community's uh, it's everything modeling, and you can see we have a lot of varied interests here, which is really cool. And you can just build whatever comes to your mind. But we'd like to organize these group builds to kind of give everybody on the same thing. I'm thinking at some point down the line we're going to pick a group build and all build the exact same model. I think that would be really fun to do. Um, and just see what different spins people put on the same model kit. That would be really interesting. So we'll think about that one down the road. Here's some work on a Ken Spriggs on his Millennium Falcon. Jason Yates, who says he's been away from the hobby for a little while, working on this Tomcat F-14. Always a popular airplane model to build. Beautiful X-Wing diorama from DJ Modelworks. Pretty sweet. Frankie Goes to Hobbywood showing off his new compressor kit. As you can see, the Star Destroyer is quite a popular build right now, and I'm sure the various Millennium Falcon kits that are out there are going to be really popular for our Star Wars group build. Here's the D'Agostini R2D2. This is a 1/2 scale model, guys. We showed you this last time, I think, and it's just fantastic. You've got to get it piece by piece. You have to subscribe to their magazine, and you'll get a part with each magazine you get per month, I think, and it takes a while, but when you're done, it's just a fantastic kit. They've got the Millennium Falcon version of that and several others of different subjects. And they've done some military stuff and all that, too. I think they did a big Spitfire model and some other stuff, but just top-notch. Revo Dave working on a 1/24 scale de Havilland Mosquito from World War II. One of the fastest piston engine planes of the war. Really fast because it had Merlin engines in it, the same Rolls-Royce engines in the Spitfire, but it had two of them in this entire plane, believe it or not. Most of it was made out of wood. So that's why it was extremely fast and maneuverable. Very, very well-loved plane by the pilots that flew those back in World War II. Very few of them still exist. So there we go, guys. That's a nice little update on our community. A lot of stuff going on, and as I said, we're going to be ongoing with our Star Wars updates all the way until February, so plenty of time. I'm going to be starting to work on my kit here pretty soon. I'm going to actually do the Star Destroyer, the same 2700 scale kit, and looking forward to working on that, using some of the new green strawberry stuff that's out there for photo etch parts and some other stuff, so pretty cool. Okay, guys, one more break, and then we'll come back, and tonight we're going to not waste any time and get right over to the bench, because it's going to take a little while to put this together. But for those of you interested in following along, we're going to be able to show you tonight how to set one of these bases up. If you've never done this before, and a lot of you have asked questions about that, we're going to show you how to put the sound card in there, wire it all up, and get it ready to work in a display base, and then also be able to connect to the model, whatever you want to connect to that for lighting effects and things. So we'll be right back with that in just a second, everybody. Okay, everybody, here we are again, and we've moved over to the bench now, and we're going to take you through tonight. Should be interesting for a lot of the guys that have wanted to learn a little bit about this. We're going to take you through setting up one of these little bases here. Now, I happen to be using this Polar Lights base because I'm finishing up another one of my Enterprise models, and in this particular build, the customer wanted the sound system added on to this, so this is just one form of a base, but this method that we're going to show you tonight will work for any kind of a base that you want to use. These little wooden ones that I've shown you that I get from Michael's and Hobby Lobby, or whatever kind of a system you want to use, but this will give you the general idea of how to set it up and how to wire it and make it tie in with the model itself. So we went over this a couple of weeks ago on our episode, and it's actually listed in the description. I think it was episode 116, if I'm not mistaken, but it's in the description there, where we showed you how to take one of these Big Dogs sound cards. That's the company that produces these. These were originally done for greeting cards that had little sound systems in them when you open them up and would say a little greeting message or something like that, and they kind of expanded on that technology. And we have this particular board that they offer here, which is a 5-button board. It has 5 individual momentary switches connected to it, so we can do 5 individual files, basically, if you want to think of it that way, whether we want to put dialogue or sounds or whatever we can decide we want to put on this. And we have a total of a little over 3 minutes of memory at 8 bits, which is about as low as you want to go before the sound quality really starts to drop off. So, but with 8 bits, an 8-bit type file, as we showed you, you can get more information about the actual files and installing them and programming the board and everything on that video I'm just mentioning from before. I think it was episode 116. But here tonight, we're going to assume that the board's already been programmed, which it has. I've got my 5 sound effects on here, which are classic Star Trek sounds. We've got the sound of the bridge, the sound of the phasers, the photons, and all that, and the opening monologue with the theme from the original TV show. So we've got those on 5 separate switches here. So what I've done is I very seldom use these switches that come with this. These are kind of just there to show you that it works. They're kind of like meant to be used on a surface mount, and they're not actually very attractive looking switches, if you want to say it. Now, they are cool if you're going to put this in a some kind of a diorama scene, or your base is part of your diorama or whatever, and you want to have the sound system in there. I've seen people do things like clever things like, if you got like little details on the diorama, hiding these switches underneath of things like rocks or behind a little tree that might be there or something, and just have them kind of hidden. And they do work out good for something like that. You can mount a rock on the top of it and push the rock, and this will actually activate the sound. Cool things like that I've seen done with it. But for practical purposes tonight, I'm using these nicer looking momentary push button switches, which I get from Jerry at HDA Model Works. Now, stay tuned for the end of this, because we're going to actually take you into the final step, which is missing in a lot of this information, and that is we're going to show you where you can actually get some of this stuff. It's pretty much where I get almost all of my electronic stuff, whether it's switches, wiring, LED lights, LED strip, pretty much everything you see me use here in the shop when I do my builds, I'm getting from this one location, just because it's he happens to sponsor our show, which I really appreciate that, but it's just really competitive pricing, and Jerry's customer service is outstanding. And there's a lot of people out there watching right now can attest to when you order something from Jerry, you get it, and you get it quick, and you get what you were looking for. And Jerry's right there to answer any questions you have, because a lot of people are new to this, and a lot of people don't quite understand some of the electronics, and they're trying to learn. So tonight we want to help with a little bit of that. We're going to, as I said, show you how to wire this. So I've got all my components laid out here. I've got these 2 switches I'll be using. These are what they call locking on-off push-button switches. Again, I get these at HDA Model Works. There are several different styles they have available there. This is a single momentary type switch. In other words, it's a type of switch that doesn't lock. It just, when you push it down for just a second, it releases. It just opens and closes real briefly, just like that. It doesn't stay one way or the other like these do. So we're going to be using one of these for our power switch, and the other one for some sound effects that we're going to have built into the model, which we'll talk about as we get into this. And then over here we've got this little jack, which we're going to install in this little hole I've done right here. My preliminary work I did on this base is what I do on these is I lay everything out where I'm going to put it and measure it and get it all centered and all that, and then drill my various sizes for the holes of the switches that I need to put, you know, and just kind of think about that first, get that all laid out, and then I've got it all opened up here on the bottom where all of our components are going to go. So, but again, this is just one form of a base. You can use anything out there. The main thing we want to show you tonight is how to get it in there and get it wired so everything works. And let's get started here. We've got our wire. We're going to need a little bit of that. I use this 30 gauge wrapping wire. We've got our solder iron here ready to go. We've got our scissors to do a little bit of trimming. We've got some heat shrink tubing. And what I've done preliminary here is I've installed these 5 momentary switches, which we're going to be substituting for these switches that come on this soundboard originally. So we're just going to be clipping these off and using these instead. So I'm going to start by getting this thing flipped over, and we're going to start laying down our components in here. The first thing I want to do is I want to get my my soundboard mounted in its location that it's going to sit in. So I'm going to lay that down in here now. We want to mount it face up, and we want to kind of think about when we're putting this in there the best way for it to sit so it's not going to interfere with anything, and we can also reach, you know, our wiring can reach the other components that we want to use. So I've got this little hole right here I'm going to be using for the power jack, so I've got to stay away from that. So, but we've got these wires coming for our momentary switch right here. Let me get this little transistor out of the way. I'll explain what this is for in a minute too. We've got our little harness right here, and we want to bring this over to our 5 buttons that we have over here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to take and make sure that they're all going to reach the way I position this board, and it looks like they will. Now, these little dividers in here on this base, I've drilled a small hole through each one so that my wires can pass through these and not go over the top of those, and that way they'll be, you know, they'll stay nice and tucked down nice and tight inside there, and it'll make my distance shorter to get my wires over to where I need to go. So I'll be doing these one at a time so I don't get them mixed up. I'm going to take one at a time, and I'm going to, you know, clip the original switch off of it here, and I'm going to pass those wires through these holes and get it lined up with one of these switches here. Now I want to make sure that I've got the sounds in a certain order on this board. Now I know that the first one over here to the far left is number 1, and so I want that to be number 1 on the far left. If I was to flip this over, I want it to be to this switch on the far left on the top of our base here, so I want to keep that in order, so I got to keep that in mind too. So the very first thing I'm doing here is I'm going to lay this down, and I think I like this angle right here. That's going to look pretty good to me. We're going to have room for our jack to be installed there and the wiring to get to that with no issue. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this down. Now what I'm using on this is just your standard hot glue gun. This is what they call a medium temperature one. If you want to get one of these guns, you don't need to go out there and get the industrial strength version, because it actually might produce glue that's too hot for some plastic. You know, if the plastic is a little bit thin on something you're working on, you can actually lay the glue on there and actually blister it or melt it on the other side. So this is just your standard sort of what they call a mid-temperature gun. And we're just going to put a couple of little dots of this hot glue on the very corners of this soundboard. Don't worry, the hot glue doesn't hurt the board or any of the, you know, the connections or anything on the board. It won't hurt it at all. It's not conductive material, so it won't short out or anything like that. And you can just lay that down. Now this doesn't set up immediately. You're going to have to kind of hold it in place, and you wind up with a few little strings coming off of your glue. You just wait till they cure up a little bit, and you can just, you know, pick them right off of there. But this will be plenty solid when it sets for just a second or two here. And this hot glue gun can come in handy for installing components inside your models, whether you're mounting LEDs or control boards, or wanting to hold some wires down in a group, or whatever you want to use it for. It's really handy for that. So I highly recommend having a hot glue gun handy if you don't already have one. So this is starting to set up pretty good here for us. Okay, we've got that sitting in there pretty good. Now the speaker, you can see it has the speaker attached to it with 2 fairly short wires here. And I actually want the speaker to be over here. You can see I've got this little slot on the top of the base, I've drilled 4 little holes right here, and the speaker's going to sit behind that, and that's where our sound's going to be coming out of. So I want to be able to line that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, I have to look at this with my magnifying glass because the speaker is marked with plus and minus on it. And I want to take the negative one off first, and it looks like it's the one on the left here. So I'm going to unsolder that one, real careful. And we want to make sure that we keep track of what polarity this is, because if you accidentally reverse the polarity on this soundboard to the speaker, it will still work. The speaker will still play, but it's not going to be as efficient as it should, and the sound could wind up being kind of distorted. So you want to make sure that we keep that polarity right. So now what I've done is I know this is my negative side, so I'm just going to go ahead and strip this wire off of here just a little bit. And sometimes that works with a lighter will take care of that just as easy. We're going to burn a little bit of this vinyl insulation off this wire and get a little bare spot right there. And then we're going to take some heat shrink tube, which I've cut here already in these lengths, and I'm going to slide that over our wire. So we're just going to take some black 30 gauge wire here, which I've got ready to go. Get this ready to come out of the spool here. And we don't need a lot of wire, maybe about that much, about a foot. And I'm going to use this to make our battery wire a little bit, or our speaker wire a little bit longer there, so that we can extend that speaker away from our board a little bit and get it mounted where we'd like to have it. And at the same time making sure that we keep the polarity correct on our coming from our soundboard. So sometimes you might have to not have to do that if you're just putting it in a regular wooden base or something like that, and you've got a kind of a more of an open area. I've got to work with this. I can't remove all the ribbing of this base here, or it'll be too flimsy. So I've got a compartment, put everything in a little compartment here. But on a more open type base, you may not even have to clip the wires off of the speaker here. You might be able to just put the speaker right next to the soundboard wherever you want the sound to come at. And if you got a little bit more leeway where you can actually mount the board, so think about that too. But so we've got that ready to go. We've got our wire. Now, as I said, I drilled a little hole here, so I'm passing this wire through that, so it's going to stay nice and flat in there. Now we're going to connect this wire onto the original wire coming off of our board that went to the speaker, that we unhooked from the speaker, and we're going to solder this little connection here, and then seal it up with the heat shrink tube. So I've slid the heat shrink tube over the wire and just have it, a couple inches away so it doesn't melt when we solder it. And then we'll slide it over there and we'll melt it in place, and that will be a secure connection. So let me get this soldered real quick. We don't want to have that over the board when we solder that either, in case something drips. So just off to the side here a little bit. Doesn't take a lot of solder. These are really tiny wires. Okay, so we've got that on there. Now we're going to slide our heat shrink tube over that. Got a little burr sticking up here we got to get rid of. There we go. Get that in there. Just a quick hit with the lighter is how I like to do it. Or if you have a heat gun handy, you can use that too. And there we go. We got that one sealed up. So we know now that that's our negative wire because it's black, and we're just going to cut that off. I'll save this little scrap of wire for something else we're going to use. And now we'll do our red wire. So we've got plus and minus. Red's usually plus in most cases, so that's how I wire these. And we're going to pass that through the hole here. Alright. And just strip that a little bit with our fingernail. And then back over here on the speaker, we're going to unsolder this other wire. Get that off of there. Okay, so now the speaker's free. Now sometimes on these little boards they've got these little terminals here covered with hot glue is basically what it is. That they glued the wire in place, and so what I usually do is I take the tip of my solder iron and just kind of melt through that a little bit and get the the bare solder exposed, and then you're usually fine after that. So we've got this wire loose now. We're going to do the same thing we just did. We're going to strip a little bit of wire off of that so we can get a bare wire showing there. And then we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of our heat shrink tube again, slide that over the wire we're going to connect onto that, twist them together. Alrighty. Ready to solder. So again, we'll do the same thing here. Make sure, can't stress enough, don't do that over the top of the board, because if you drip a little bit on there and you don't notice it, you could, when you power the board up, that can create a short, you know, on top of the board, and your board could go up in smoke, and you don't want that to happen. So be really careful with that. Just getting a little bit on there. Okay. Same thing again. We're going to be doing this a lot, guys. A lot of soldering and covering with heat shrink, but this is how we get a nice clean finish when we're done here. Okay, we're going to heat that up. Got that sealed. Okay, so now we're ready. We've got our speaker set up here pretty well figured out. I'm going to get these wires in here and kind of look at now like how I want to tuck them down so they look nice and neat and stuff like that. I'm just going to tuck it down right next to that other wire harness that's coming off for our momentary buttons there, and just a little drop of hot glue on that whole thing. And we'll just have to sit here for a second and wait for that to harden up for us. It works pretty quick. As I said, the medium temperature one too, it cools down quite a bit faster. You know, you don't have to wait for a long time because it's super hot when it goes on there. So just getting rid of this little string here that you get with this. And then we'll have our wires in place. So then what we'll do next is we're going to take our speaker itself and we're going to mount that down here with a couple drops of hot glue as well. I think I'm going to turn it around so it's easier to get at the connections for soldering our speaker wire back on. Okay. Do the soldering on that now. Now we got to make sure we look and see. We can see that the plus is on the right hand side. We'll go ahead and cut this wire off pretty short. Strip this wire. Get a short little terminal on here. Okay, so we're ready to solder these on now. I'll do the red one first. Alrighty. And then the negative. Alright, so that's done. Now, we're just kind of, again, figure out, you know, tuck our wires out of the way, make them look nice. Actually, I'm going to pull them up first, and then we'll get this speaker glued in place. Now, you want to make sure with this glue that you stay away from the, you just keep it on the edge of the speaker, you know, the metal framework of the speaker. You don't want to glob a bunch of glue all over it, because if it gets, you know, behind the metal frame there and is touching on the actual speaker itself, it'll cause the speaker to sound really weird when it tries to play because it can't move fully. So just keep that in mind too. And of course, with these soundboards, you have the option of, you know, you can use this default speaker that it comes with, and there's also some aftermarket miniature speakers you can get that you can just connect up to this, and it will dramatically improve how it sounds. It's really unbelievable how much I've hooked one of these boards up to a you know, fairly good sized boombox speaker, and it's amazing how loud and how powerful it will get it with a larger speaker. But it sounds great just the way it is on a little bass like this. So okay, so you can see what we've got now is we've got the speaker installed, a couple drops of hot glue. We got our wiring for that. That's done. Now we are going to connect two more wires onto this. That's why I left these out in the open like they are. And they are actually coming from the model itself, which I'll explain here in a little bit. But basically, in a nutshell, the two wires that are coming down are connected to the phaser and photon torpedo LEDs that are built into the model, so that every time that this sound that we fire here makes the sound of the phaser or the photon, that will actually cause that to light up on the model itself. So that wire will come down from the model through the mounting rod here and through the base and connect. We'll move it over, bring it from here to here, and connect it to these two terminals on the speaker. But we don't want those lights to come on for every sound that we play. So what we're going to do is we're going to mount one of these locking type on-off switches, which is what I'm going to do next. We're going to install that here on the right hand side, and let's see, I should have the nut for that right here. Here we go. And that's going to be our switch for controlling the light effect on that phaser photon thing. Now you can use this same theory on anytime you use this soundboard if you want to have lighting effects going with it, and you want to have some, in other words, you want some lighting effect or some sounds to have lights with it and some sounds not. So this is the way you can control that. It's a kind of a workaround. Since this is not, these soundboards that we're using here are not what they call intelligent boards, where they will, know when to produce light and when not, depending on the sound. You have to get a, entirely different type of a board for that. But these are really simple and easy to work with, and with a little bit of clever thought, you can make them do things that you didn't think they could do before, and that's what we're basically attempting to show you here. Let's get this tightened down on here. Fairly decent. And make sure it's kind of straight. Looks pretty good. Okay, so now this little on-off switch has been mounted here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of our red wire here, because now you can use either side to interrupt that. It doesn't really matter because you've got your plus and minus coming, and that's the signal output from the board that's going to tell the speaker when to make sound, and that will also trigger our LED lights when they're connected. So we're going to connect another wire from one side of our switch here, where I'm just going to strip this and get it ready to solder onto that switch. You got two little terminals on this switch. I'll hold this other one up here and show you. You've got two terminals there, so we're going to be soldering to one side and to the other side. I'll show you how that works. So I've just got this little wire brought into the terminal on the left. I'm going to wrap it around there, the stripped part of it, and then I'm going to solder it real quick. What I like to do, and I recommend practicing this, guys, is whenever you're going to be doing little projects like this, solder each thing as you go along. Don't think about going back and soldering everything at the end. In other words, don't make temporary connections. Solder everything as you go along. That way you are sure that you're not forgetting to solder something, because it's really a bummer if you've fortunately all this work will be pretty much out in the open. But let's say if this was inside of the model or something like that, and you didn't solder something, and it might work right now, but suddenly later on it became loose or unconnected, then everything that's depending on that connection is going to go lights out. So just little things like that to think about will make a big difference in how you have things work out for you. So keep that in mind. So we've got this one that we connected on there. We're going to go ahead and solder that. Okay. And now that one is going to, the other end of this wire, we're going to connect onto the red terminal of the speaker. So that's tying into the, the sound that's coming out of our board. Okay. So that signal is going through like it normally would, but what we're going to be able to do is the wiring now from the model, we have a plus and a minus wire that's coming out of the model that connects to the LEDs that will light up. So we'll take the red wire and we'll connect that to the other side of this switch that we just had, so we can interrupt that now. So whenever we want the lights to not work, we just push the button and the switch is then open, and then power won't go through that. The sound will still happen, but the lights won't come on for the LEDs in the model. Like if we're playing the dialogue, we don't want the phasers to be firing and lighting up while that's happening. So I think if you can probably follow along with what I'm talking about now. And so when we get to the part later when we want to fire the phasers and the photons, we push this button back on, and then we play those sounds, and now our lighting effects work in conjunction with that. So pretty simple, and it works. It's pretty effective, and that works whenever you have a sound effect that the lighting that goes along with it kind of matches the sound, if you follow what I mean. You can set stuff up that way. So we have that. Now we're going to go over here and we're going to mount this. This is the, on these boards I use this little 5-volt transistor here. And what this does is this takes power from 9 volts, which I'm using to power my model, and drops it down to 5 volts, which this is what this soundboard needs to have. It can't handle any more than 5 volts or they tend to burn up. So we're going to be making sure we give it 5 volts. So we're going to mount this little transistor in here, and I'm going to just kind of get it out of the way off to the side here. You know, whenever you're doing this stuff, like I said, you're just kind of looking at, okay, how can I keep my wires kind of nice and neat and everything look fairly presentable in there. So I've got a nice spot on the side of one of these ribs. This will not get hot. It does have a heat sink on it. It's made to be able to handle up to 30 volts DC coming in and still drop it down to 9 volts. But keep in mind that the more input voltage you give it, the hotter, you know, the harder it's going to have to work to drop that down, and therefore the hotter it's going to get. But at 9 volts coming in, it's not going to get even lukewarm to the touch, so we don't have to worry about that. And we did the same thing here. We took a little bit of our hot glue and just put a little drop of it on there. I'm just holding it for a second, waiting for it to kind of harden up, and then we can move on here. So that little transistor will be mounted in there. Now we've got the output and input of this. The output's already been connected to the board, so we don't have to worry about that. But the input, which is our 9 volts coming in, we're going to connect that to the main power switch here, because I don't want the board to be powered up when it's, you know, I don't want to connect that directly to our power source. I think I'm going to need a little bit more glue here. Let's give this another shot. Didn't hit that quite good enough. Okay. Get that to hold on there real good. And then, so we want to, whenever we turn the power off and on to the model, we also want to turn the power off and on to this soundboard. We don't want to have that soundboard sitting there powered up all the time. There's just no reason to have it like that, you know. Not that it would hurt it or anything like that, but it's no different than when it's sitting there when it has batteries in it. Normally this board is designed to operate on a couple of these little miniature batteries here, and they're always on. But, you know, just in case anything ever shorted out or anything like that, you'd have a separate, you know, setup for that. So just waiting for this to cure up here a little bit on this transistor. And then we're going to run these wires, which are the inputs now. We're going to connect the ground directly to the power coming in jack, and the other one, the red one, we're going to run over to our switch here, which is going to control both that and the lighting for the main lighting on the hull of the model. In other words, the main power wires coming out of the model will connect here to our power switch, and that way one push of the button and everything is either off or everything is either on. So keep it real simple. So I'm going to pull these wires through these little holes I've drilled here, especially this positive one, and get that located near the switch that we're going to put in here in just a second. Get that ready. Ground we're going to take and put it over here to this side where we're going to put the jack. So, okay, while we're waiting for that glue to dry and that transistor, let's go ahead and put the jack in here. It's real simple. I just drilled a certain size hole. This has got a little flange on it, and we're just going to take that from the top side and slide that in. You can see we got two little terminals there. Not tight fit. I thought that hole was a little bit bigger, but we can screw it down in there, hopefully. Get it in there all the way. Nice looking little, you know, black matching flange on that. Little nice metal part in the middle. That, again, is available at HDA ModelWorks. When we wrap this up, guys, I'm going to take you over to the page, and we'll have a look at it on the screen, and you can see where I'm getting all this stuff. And you can, you know, like I said, there's a lot of options there too, different styles of switches that you might want to use, or but you can get the wire, the you can even get the solder over there, I believe. So kind of your one-stop shop for all that stuff, and the prices are really good. So okay, so we just mounted that little jack in there. Now, one thing that's really important to do on this is we're going to be using a 9-volt DC, what they call a wall wart, which is just your basic wall plug-in power adapter that you're familiar with. This takes AC current, 110, and drops it down to 9 volts DC. And so we're going to plug this in, and just for a second here, and we have to do a really important test on this. And even though I use this, I think I'm using the same power supplies because I get these from Jerry as well. I never trust that there hasn't been some kind of change or something like that, and I make sure that I have my polarity right. So what I do is I've got it plugged in. I'm going to put it in the jack here, and then I'm going to take my little digital. Hope we didn't lose our focus there. Come on down. Hopefully that'll focus for you guys. Yeah, it's kind of not wanting to focus from far away very well, it doesn't look like. Well, hopefully you guys are getting the general picture here of what we've got so far. Let me see if I can bring this up, and then if it'll follow it down here. There we go. It's a little bit better. Sorry about that. Didn't notice that until now. So we've got all that set up. So now I've got it powered up, and I want to take my little mini voltmeter here, and I'm just going to set it on 20 volts DC, and that'll be on the close enough to the proper scale. And then I'm just going to touch these these leads on here to find out which is which here, and because I don't want to reverse the polarity. Now one of the leads is shorter than the other one, and so you'll be able to tell. So right now I've got the plus lead for my tester on the tall, and the negative lead on the short one, and I'm showing a reverse polarity. That's when that happens. You see the little negative symbol come up here on your multimeter. So we're going to switch this around, and we're going to put the red on the short one and the negative on the tall one, and now we see we got about 10.1 volts coming in there. And so the short one is the red one. We want to make sure we remember that. So while I've got that fresh in my mind, I'm going to go ahead and connect this ground wire that we brought over there to the power source. Before I do that, I want to make sure I unplug it so I don't accidentally short it out when I'm soldering it. It's always a good idea. Okay, and we're just wrapping that little stripped wire around the terminal here and getting a nice kind of a snug fit. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and solder that before I forget. Okay, so now we know that that's our ground that we can use for everything else. That's ready to go. And so then we have our red wire over here. So let's go ahead and put this other locking on-off switch in there, which this switch is going to be for the main power on the model itself. That switch is going to operate when you push that button. That's going to turn everything on, all of our lighting, our spinning bassards, and everything on our Enterprise model. And like I said, keeping it simple with one power activation button. But like, this is unlimited, guys. You can expand on this all you want with separate things that you want to light in your model. Separate systems, and that all it requires is a separate circuit built into the model, and connected to a different power switch. And you can string all those together and have things that you can turn off and on individually. Using this same method. It's very you just carry it farther than what we're doing here. This is just the real basic concept of it. So let's make sure we got this switch in here nice and tight, and we're kind of straight up on the top here, something like that. All right, that looks pretty good. A little fine-tuning adjustment there. So there's our switches on the top. We've got both of our locking switches now. So now you can see we're working with the power. And the same thing, we're just going to take this little wire that I stripped earlier, and we're going to connect that to the one side of the switch here, one of the terminals, and that will be controlling the power in and out to our soundboard, whether we want it turned off or on. Get this one wrapped around the terminal here. And we'll solder that one before we forget. Okay, so half of that's done. Now I'm just going to tuck this wire in here and, kind of make that look nice and neat while I'm moving along here. All right. So, one mistake I made here, guys. I see it already. I put my jack in the wrong hole. This hole over here is supposed to be for our momentary switch, so I'm going to have to move that. Let's get this out of here. That was supposed to go over by our board here on the side. No big deal. We've got one last momentary switch we're putting in over here, and that's going to control the... we have the multi-speed control that we used in the model from Tenant Control, so we can change the speed of the rotating bassards on the front of that, and that's just simply by touching it onto a ground. It's really simple to set that up, so we'll show you how we do that here in a second, but I just got to unsolder this wire so we can move it. Okay. Get this over in the spot it should be in. Okay, back over here. There we go. A little bit tighter fit. Sometimes these little nuts can be hard to get started on these threads here, but I think we got it going on there. Get it going straight. Getting stuck there about after a turn and a half. I'll get it here, guys. Give me a second. There we go. What's going on now? Oh, you know what? I think I have the wrong... That's what the problem is. I had the wrong nut. That goes to our momentary switch. Okay, so... Get this to cooperate a little bit here. Didn't anticipate this taking this long, guys. There we go. Got it cleared. All right. Get this tightened back up. All right, so that's our jack now in the right place, and we're going to move this ground wire and get it back, put back on there before I forget. We can now make it a little bit shorter. Okay. Reactivate the solder on this and we should be good. Okay, got that corrected. So let's put in this last momentary switch. Here we go. And then we'll be done with all the switches. Again, I mentioned this one is for the rotating speed on our bassards, which you can put whatever kind of switch you want on there. It just has to be a momentary type, but whatever style you want to put on there. Get that a nice little snug. Okay, and I like to have that one kind of off to the side a little bit because you don't use it that often, not as much as you do these sound buttons, so that works out pretty good. All right, so we got that. Now we're going to bring our power wire from our jack over here, which will be our our positive side, and we're going to bring that over to the switch over on this side over here, and that's going to complete our. I want to make sure I flip it over the right way. Got this one as our power switch, so I just need a little short piece of red wire, and we're going to go to this terminal here. Actually, I'm on the wrong one again. Gotta go to this one. Gotta remember when you're flipping it over which side you're on. We want the switch on the left to be the one on the far left to be our main power switch. So do that. Okay, and then we're going to come over here, go in between these two ribs. All right, and so now this wire that we're doing for the main power that comes off of our jack, our input jack, that's coming from the power supply. So that's going to mean that we're going to have power to the model now and to the soundboard via the switch that we just hooked up. Get this twisted around there nice and tight. And I'll give that a little bit of solder. Okay, so we're there with that one and we're there with this one. We're going to solder the other terminal on the switch as well so we don't forget that. All right, so basically where we're at now is if we were to plug in our power, our soundboard would work, and we have it ready to be connected to the power coming in from the model. So what we're going to do now is we're going to let me get you guys a look at this, just kind of go over what we did. We took the power coming from our board and we brought it over to the ground for that is connected to this little jack right here, which is our main power coming in from our little power pack, our little wall wart. And then the red side of that we took over here to the switch, and then we brought the power off of the jack and brought that to the other side of the switch so that the jack is interrupting, or the switch is interrupting the plus side of our circuit here. That's how we turn off and on the power to our control board here, not have it on all the time. Now that same terminal on the far side of our power switch here, the power wire, the red wire coming out of the model, will connect to that so that when we hit that switch, that wire is then hot, and so is the wire going to our board, so they both light up at the same time or work at the same time. Really simple. Okay, and then the other switch we have here is, you'll see that we'll have two wires coming from the model, a red and a black, that are for the phaser lights and photon lights, and so we'll connect the red one to the other side of our switch here, and then that will connect directly over to the speaker output, and we can make that either go on or off like we want it to, and we connect the other negative wire off of that to the negative output on our board itself, the negative side of our speaker wire here. So, but now it's time to take all of these momentary switches and get them connected over here on to our switches that we intend on replacing them with. So what I want to do now is I want to test this to make sure it's going to work, and we're going to play our basic sounds so we know which one is which to make sure and double check on that. So we're going to connect them one at a time, and keep your fingers crossed now, guys. This should work. If we have the switch turned on here, I want to make sure I'm on powered wise. And we are plugged in. Okay, we got to check something here. Could be the speaker output. Oh, we've got our... I'm pushing the wrong switches. Here we go. Not that one. There we go. So you can see that gets pretty loud. That was our basic phaser firing effect. So what I want to find first is I want to find the one that's our opening dialogue, which is this one right here. So we'll just turn that off and stop it, but we know it's this one right here, so we're going to route that one over first to our switches and get that bypass. So I'm just clipping these off. Alright, now these, it does not matter polarity wise whether they're backwards or not. They just go onto a momentary switch and they work either way. So I'm going to strip these wires using the lighter method again here. Just get this little insulation a little bit warm, strip a little bit of wire or vinyl covering off of that, leaving the bare wire underneath. Give them a little twist and make them nice and sharp and pointy when we're these little terminals that we're putting them through here are really small in these switches, so these got to be nice and tight when you go to thread them through there. But let's put them through our little slots we cut in our ribbing here and get them worked over there. Like I said, I like to do these one at a time so I don't mix them up. And hopefully that's what we'll do here. Alright, you can see I've left enough room so they would all reach. You can extend these wires too if you need to. If like I said, for whatever design you're doing, you can modify all this stuff and make it closer or farther away, whatever you want to do. So we got it pulled through there now, and we want to make sure that, like I said, our number one sound, we wanted to have it all the way to the left here. Looking at it this way, if it was facing you. So we want to make sure we connect to that switch, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to get these wires hooked up, one to each side of the terminals. Doesn't matter which way you go. Like I said, these are not polarity sensitive. They work either way. Get this worked in here. These are always a little tricky because the little eyelet there on the end of that terminal is really, really tiny. Get that pulled in there and then wrap it around. You want to make sure that not a thread of your wire, no stray wire or no thread of it is hanging out in space there and might be, touching on that other terminal. You can't see it. You want to look at that with some magnifying glasses to make sure that it's nice and clear and clean and everything. Then solder it one at a time. Got that one soldered. Do the other side here. Get these wires twisted together just a little bit better here. Get that to go through that little opening. There we go. Get this wire wrapped around there. Alright, looks good. Solder this one up. Okay, so that's the first of our wires. So before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and test this now and see if what we did there worked out. We got that. We got to turn our power on. First button. Somehow we're pushing the red alert there. And there's our opening monologue. Space. On the first button. So now what we want to do is we want to find out the second one, which is going to be the sounds of our bridge, which is this one here. So I'll keep that one off to the side. We'll do the same thing over again here, guys. Real simple. We're going to go to our second button this time. Get rid of that. Once you get all this figured out and everything, it starts going really, really fast. It's not hard to do at all. We're just getting this, taking our time here and showing you this step by step. But once you get used to doing this a little bit, you'll be knocking these things out like no problem. It's just like I said, you know, I try to think of things like this and just try to keep it really simple. There's a lot more complicated ways you can do it if you want to, but this works really effective, and it's kind of works itself out once you get used to it. So we've got our second set of wires there ready. We'll just get these pulled through the terminals again. I'm just being really careful, like I said, not to have any little strand of that fine wire that's, you know, hanging out there that could, you know, touch that other terminal. So we're just making sure we got that on there nice and clean. Then we'll hit it with some solder. These switches are, you know, the housings for them are plastic, so you're soldering onto a metal terminal that's mounted in plastic, so you want to keep it in mind. Don't lay your solder on there for a long time, heating it up, because that will melt the housing and then it may not work correctly anymore. It may not make a connection. So, you know, have your solder ready, and just a little drop is all it takes, and get it on and get it off of there as quick as you can. Only 3 more to go. Okay, that one's soldered on there, and I'm just gonna, you know, as I go along, just kind of tuck the wires down and, you know, try to keep it fairly neat, and just work my way across. Okay, got to plug in again, check it, turn it on, and there's our bridge sound. So the next one we want is the red alert, which is that one. Double check that. Okay, so I'll keep that wire in my hand again, and we'll unplug and get ready to route this one over there. You can see it's working out pretty good. This one up over here. Repeating the same thing, just wrapping this wire around this terminal. And if you missed that earlier, it doesn't matter on these momentary switches coming off of the soundboard that there's no correct polarity on that. They'll work, either way. Just connect them, just as long as you make sure they're separated and connected on these little switches. All right. Go for a 2-for-1 this time. I'll solder both of these. Okay, those are done. Get these wires tucked down. Put a little drop of hot glue on all that here at the end when we're done, so the wires aren't just flopping around down there. Okay, we're just down to 2 left. We'll plug in again. It's getting a little monotonous, I'm sure, for you guys by now, but we just wanted to take you through to the very end and show you how this works out. Turn our power back on, and we're looking for the phaser effect. Let's see, power once more. All right, there's our phaser. Unplug it. All right. Pull these through. Okay. Let's twist it up nice and tight again. All right. And the nice thing is that the last one we already know for sure that that's the photon effect, so we can just go ahead and connect that one right on there. We've got these all figured out now. Don't have to, we can skip that one last test part of it. Fine little threads of wire. Got to make sure, like I said, that they're not where you don't want them to be. I think I'm going to make this one a little bit shorter. It's a little bit too long. There we go. Down to 1 left, guys. I promise it's almost over. All right. There we go. Now our last set of wires. Got stuck to our glue a little bit there. There we go. Alright. Coming behind that other switch. These actually can be trimmed down just a little bit. Don't want to leave any extra wire if we don't need it. Last one. Okay. All right. Well, we should be able to test it all out now. We're going to make sure all these wires are tucked in there good. And so all we have left then is the terminal for the ground here, and the did we lose that one? Okay, so we have the connection there for the switch that we're going to run off of the power that's coming out of the model that we can turn our LEDs off and on with, which we left that one terminal open there, and then the power coming in from the power itself from the wall work goes from this little switch over here up to the power wiring harness that's going into the model, so we can control everything with one shot. Let's see here, we got this -1. The other -1 went out. Okay, and we've got all of our connections made there. Now, there'll be one more negative connection that we make. This little switch that we install over here on the side. This doesn't have anything to do with the soundboard if you're just doing the soundboard in your model base like we talked about at the beginning, but for this particular model, we have that Tenna Controls spinning effect that we have inside the warp engine. So to control the speed of that, we'll be able to push this button multiple times and change the speeds. So all that does is it sends a ground signal to the control boards that make that happen up inside the warp nacelle. So we just tap into our ground coming in from our power supply here and bring a wire over to that one side of the switch, and then the other one will be the wire that I have coming out of the model itself in the harness that goes up to those control boards in the side, the warp nacelles, and that's all that is. It's just a simple straight circuit. Push the button, it sends a quick ground signal to that and causes it to change speed. So we don't have to worry about that part of it right here. But just going over and checking everything here. I'm a little curious about this little ground wire. If I didn't forget something here, I'm going to check that and see that we've got one side of the ground going on there. And this one, I'm going to have to trace it back to see what I did with that again. Okay, that's going to the board. And to the transistor. All right, let's test this. I think my ground wire came off there, but let me see if this works or not. Yeah, that's what we got. Okay, so we got to ground that wire back on there. Go ahead and unplug this. Yeah, like I said, you go back and remember how you've got everything hooked up and everything, and you should be fine with this once you get this all connected on there. I just want to double check here because we don't want to have a hook this up wrong. All right, and then that'll go on there. Okay, we should be in business. It's just our ground wire that grounds everything together. I didn't get quite enough solder on that. That's why at the end you go back and you double check everything. I usually like to take my little tweezers and go around and pull on all the wires to make sure they're all good. Now we can play all of our individual sounds. There's our bridge. There's our red alert. There's our phasers and our photons. So now we see that when we turn this button off here, that kills all the sound and everything, and there's no power getting to anything. So this other button over here we have for our lighting. So if we had our LEDs coming from the model hooked up to this, what would happen is if this switch was off, they wouldn't light when we were playing any of these other sounds, but we push it and turn it on and they will light whenever the sounds are working. So that gives you an idea of how that works. And again, this one over here is not related to the soundboard. That's just for the controlling of the warp speed, and we'll simply be connecting a ground wire from one side of that switch to our ground that comes in on our jack over here from the power supply. The other one will connect to the wire that's coming from the model itself, and so it won't make a circuit until that button is pushed, if you see what I mean. Then it only gets a ground for just a second, and that's what tells those boards that are in the model that control the warp engine speed to change speeds. But there you can see the layout. Really, in the end, it's pretty clean and pretty simple. We'll just have the wires coming from the mounting rod that goes in this, and there'll be a hole drilled in here. The wires will, come through that out of the model and terminate here on the speaker connection and over here on this little jack for our speed control, and then all the wiring is done. So that's how you wire one of these up. But now you can, as I said at the top there, you can use this method for just this soundboard and do this, wherever you're going to use it, whether it's in, any kind of a bass or whatever. And if you're not worried about turning the sounds off or the lighting off and on with the sounds, in other words, if you're just doing all sounds, you don't even need to worry about this other switch that we put in here. That was just to control that little effect on this particular model. But if you do have a model where you have to have, you want to have the sounds work in conjunction with the lighting, then you do have to put a switch like this in. And you have to separate every one. Like if you have completely different sound effects that you don't want to light with a different sound coming from the, a different lighting effect coming out of the model, you'll need to put that on a separate switch so they don't light when you don't want them to. But there's more advanced boards out there, of course, from Tenant Controls and everywhere else that are what we actually call intelligent boards that will not need all these bypass switches and everything. They will know when to light up the lights with it and when not. But this is a really simple, easy way to do it. It's a fairly inexpensive board. You can get these boards online for right around $10 and do the programming on it like we showed you in the couple episodes ago. And then once you got that down, you just install it like we did here, and you're all set. You have some extra realism or extra fun you can have with your model by adding sound and lighting effects. So just something out there. And this video will be out there now for anybody who wants to use it as a guide to put one of these together. So I hope you enjoyed that. Just like I said, just keep these basic tools and techniques that we used here is just one way of doing it. There are other ways of doing it, but just those basic concepts. Make sure you have a little meter to check your polarity. Make sure you have a good solder iron, some solder, a little bit of heat shrink here to do your wires and all that, and just try to be nice and neat when you put it all together, and that'll work just fine for you. So, okay guys, we're going to wrap up this segment here then. Looks like we're showing about 8:45 here our time, so we'll take another quick break and we'll come back and wrap things up tonight with our shout-outs and our Q&A session for tonight. So see you with that in just a couple seconds. Okay, back with you again, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that little segment. Again, here's our little base that we worked on. Maybe you can see it a little bit better here with this camera. It's a little bit higher resolution, but you can see all of our wiring's done on that. And we just have a couple little more connections to make and we'll be all finished up. And that's usually one of the last things I like to do when I'm putting together one of these models is get that all ready to go and then drop it down on there. And it's an easy couple of wires to hook up and we're all finished up. So, but we've got our neat little sound effects going on in there now, so pretty cool stuff. So I hope you enjoyed that, and if you guys have any questions about that, just leave them on the leave your comments on the actual video itself when it uploads, and I'll be happy to answer those for you if I missed something or you didn't understand something we showed there. But let's head over now to our main page and see who's here with us tonight on the chat session, and do our shout outs for tonight, and then maybe we can answer some questions if anybody has any at the end, or either I can answer them or somebody that's here in the chat session if you have a question about modeling. We have Mike Kovac with us tonight, Armando, DLC Model Builders, Jim Clark, Mike Scarola. We got Kenny with Sci-Fi Fantasy, PJC 2.0, Jim Clark, Barrick 13, George Volkowski, Shannon Freeman, the Captain, Mark Shue, Omar. Let's see. Chuck, Gearhead Workshop is here tonight. Brian Knowles. Ralph with Tenant Controls. And Roger Ball. Hanging on, we got something we got to take care of here. So yeah, we had somebody in here doing a little bit of spamming. Hopefully we got rid of them. Let's see, we have Gary Jacquard, Monsters and Ghouls, T Commando, Dana Church, Federation Shipyard. Nice to see you, Dennis. And I think we got down on the bottom there. So anybody that's in here that hasn't typed something in the chat, put your stuff in there so we can give you a shout out. That way your name will show up in here. If you guys had any questions about the soundboard work we were doing tonight, or anything about modeling, before we go too much further here, I wanted to bring up the see if I can do this again without screwing this up. Okay, well, here's a look, everybody, at the HDA ModelWorks website page. And you can see, if you go here, on the front page here, you'll see kind of a news section of what all the newest products that are available over there that Jerry has for the different model kits that are out there. Here you can see we have some parts for the 350 scale Polar Lights Enterprise refit model, some replacement detail parts for the bridge and the lower sensor dome, the impulse engine deck, and the mag grills on the warp engines. We did a review of these parts a couple episodes ago and showed you these are really beautiful parts. Just to give you an example, Jerry does carry model kits at really good prices. So here we have the Discovery that he's showing on here that's coming out very soon. We have the Paragraphics photo etch set that's available already for the Discovery kit. One is to detail the interior pod bay details, and these are for the cockpit and airlock details on the model. But moving over to what we were originally talking about here, we have on the left column here, you see we have all the different supplies that Jerry carries. We have photo etch parts, we have resin model parts, we have modeling supplies. So let's go down here to modeling supplies and look at we have power supplies. Little wall warts that we use are available there. We have heat shrink tubing, LED strip connectors, masking tape, putty, solder, switches. So let's take a look at these switches here, and you can see that Jerry sells these different types of switches, all different styles. Here you have a rocker type switch, a push button type switch, a three-way switch. These are the very these switches right here are the very ones we were using on our top of our base here, these little miniature momentary switches. Here you have the same type of switch as far as an appearance, but it's actually a locking on and off switch, so you have a different choice between this style and that style. There's some different colors here and things like that. If you want to keep everything, a certain switch does a certain thing and you want to have it in yellow and green and red, or however you want to do that. But some really cool stuff. The 30 gauge wrapping wire that I use is available there. Let's see if we can find that on here. Let's see, model kits, supplies, wire. So it's a very easy to navigate site, as you can see. And here's the wire that I use. Basically, the This is 30 gauge called wrapping wire. It has a little vinyl coating on it. It's a solid core wire, so it's not stranded, so it's pretty strong. And I used both the red and the black, but any of these colors will work for you. And then of course there's solder available there, heat shrink tube. We have the various types of LED tape that we use a lot in these model builds. Of course, individual LEDs, SMDs, surface mounted diodes, which are becoming really popular in the model building world with doing miniature lighting. All different types that you see are available here. So basically it's a one-stop shop for all your lighting supplies that you're going to need, and wiring and things like that. The little power jack that I installed into the base there that works with the power adapter is available there as well in a couple different styles. So there you have it, guys. Just wanted to show you that really quick. Really glad to be associated with Jerry, and of course Ralph's here as well tonight, Tenant Controls. These guys both have really easy to use and understand websites, and they're very good about their customer service, so that's why I've stuck with them all these years. And so I hope you'll check them out, and you can find pretty much whatever you're looking for there. And if they don't have it, just ask them a question, and I'm sure they'll help you out and help you find what you need. So let's continue on here and see if any questions have popped up in the chat. And of course, belonging to a forum like our particular forum out there, our little group we have here, which there are several, literally dozens and dozens of different little modeling communities are out there. Just join one and take part, and you can ask questions of people in there. People are using these products. People are, posting their information about how they do these, these projects and everything. So if you're new to it, you can, pick up information about that there to help steer you in the right direction. And if you have a question, just post it in there, and somebody will usually be glad to help you out. That's what's so fun about being in a community like this. So let's see, I think there's a question here. Dana Church says, how do you light the new HDA bridge? I think that's what he means. It says had, but I think he means HDA, the little small replacement bridge for the refit. That's designed to have a, you put some type of lighting underneath of the dome to light up the windows on the sides, but the forward-facing window port, which gives you the floodlight effect for the front of the saucer on the Enterprise that lights up the, the registration numbers. You use one of those little small, what they call 5mm lighthouse LEDs. It's an LED that's got like a rectangular tip on it, and you just basically what I do with it is I just sand it down until I get it to fit exactly in that little slot, and make that entire forward slot the actual, the little flat part of it, the clear part of the LED lens itself. But then that lens is actually cut to size to fit right in there flush, and then when that lights up, it gives you that little lighting effect of the forward part of the bridge, but it also floods the light out onto the top of the saucer. And that little bridge part was made to fit one of those type of LED lighthouse type LED bulbs. Just use a standard white 5mm one. So but the little small SMDs work really good for that. You can use those on the bottom side on the planetary sensor for lighting that. That's what I use for there, like the 0805 size in regular white. And you just, the basic easiest way to explain it is just use whatever will fit in there the best and give you the, enough brightness of light that you want. Like that forward floodlight on the bridge has to be pretty bright, so that's a, 5mm bulb that puts out quite a bit of light. Clint Llewellyn's asking about the solder. It's 60-40 mix rosin core solder. It's lead type solder. There's lead free solder out there now, but I just don't like it as well as the old style, with lead solder. It works fine, but if you have to reheat it and use it or restick it, for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem to want to reactivate as well as regular lead type solder does. And this size of this is, I have to see if it's marked on here or not. 062. So it's just kind of the standard size. If I hold it up to the camera here, you can kind of see the thickness of it, but it's a 60/40 rosin mix. So you don't have to use flux when you're soldering stuff together. You can if you want to. Some people like to use flux anyway, but the whole point of having the rosin in there is that you don't need flux. And I just use, I just solder it straight up like you saw me doing here tonight, and that's been working pretty good. And this solder is available just an exact size of that. This is like a, I think it's a 30-foot roll, I think. But it lasts me for a long time. But it's available over there at Jerry's website as well. I worked with Jerry a lot to kind of help him to put stuff over there that was, I kind of had this idea of like, so he could have like a one-stop shop for all these little supplies that are really kind of hard to track down and find everywhere else, and if you can get them from one place, it saves a lot of hassle and everything. So he's got pretty much everything there that you'll ever need for doing any of this kind of lighting or custom work if you're going to be doing, bases and stuff like that. Just general supplies for doing electronics and modeling, which is getting really popular. Yeah, Roger, I'm going to do something similar to what you saw being done on that Star Destroyer, only not quite as elaborate with the, I don't have a 3D printer yet, but I'm not going to, I'm just going to be laying down my strips inside the model in hopefully well thought out places that will get enough light in there, and then I'm going to use the fiber optic method of just pushing in little short strands of fiber optics wherever I want my lights to be. I'm not going to hook up the long individual strands of fiber optic all into one emitter. I don't really like doing fiber optics like that, but I'm planning on using 0.25 fiber optic for some of the windows, the main windows around the perimeter of the outer edge of the ship, and then some of the ones that I can tell from looking at it up around the bridge area and all that are, the lights there look like they're supposed to be a little bit bigger, so I might use like 0.50 or something like that. But I can just drill the size of the holes that I need and just change it up however I want, and put them in, after the model's already assembled. So that's the way I'm going to try to do mine. There's really no right way and wrong way. There's all different ways of doing that. But I really like that design concept that he's using there with the kind of dual purpose mounting tower for the lights and then having a little cradle for his control board to sit in too. That's pretty cool. Um, just in case you guys were interested, again, that soundboard that we're using, you can find that at www.bigdogs.com. That's dogs spelled DAWGS, not like dogs. It's dogs. But that's where you can find. They have a whole bunch of different versions of that board. Whether you, depending on how many switches you want. I think the maximum they offer is 5, like we're using here. But you can get one that just has one switch on it. And again, they have different lengths of memory. This one they rated 180 seconds, which is like 3 minutes. So you just have to keep that in mind. You have to separate. You can put all one sound on there that eats up the entire thing, or you can put 5 separate sounds on there, and you just got to make sure you keep them all, to where combined all together they're not longer than 3 minutes. And other than that, it's completely up to you what you want to put on there. I just think it's a really nifty little thing, and it's really easy to work with, and you can add a lot to a model with that, so just something kind of fun. But again, the type of boards that Ralph at Tenant Control sells are much more advanced than that. They're logical boards. They actually can be programmed to know whether to light up lights at the same time when there's a sound or not, and you don't have to have separate switches and all that. So in one of the upcoming episodes, we'll go over to the give you guys a look. For those of you who haven't seen it, we'll take you over to the Tenant Controls website and show you some of the stuff they have over there, and talk about how we use some of that here too with the models that we build. And you can put that, in any kind of a base that you want. You can even put the sound card inside the model if you wanted to, and have the speaker actually in the model somewhere hidden. And you can do that too. Just, you just have to have your wires running out of it to your switches wherever you're going to mount those. Just checking around for more questions, guys. So yeah, don't forget, I'm going to post the schedule for the Hangouts. I'll do that probably tomorrow sometime, and starting this next Saturday will be our first one. Probably going to start it at around 8 o'clock Central Time, and we'll go on, however long we want that night, until people get tired of being in there or whatever. It might be an hour, it might be 2, it might be 3, and we'll have the chat session running. So even though we're not going to be doing the show until back to the first of the year, I still want to give you guys, that like to get together and have the chat session every weekend or whatever, every other weekend, chance to be able to do that, and you guys can watch the Hangout at the same time and have the regular chat session. So I will put instructions up on there about how to get a hold of me through my email if you want to participate. So we'll be able to send you the link to that the night that we're going to broadcast it, and I think there's room for like 10 people. So we'll start doing those, and basically what they are, we're going to be working on our on the bench working, and showing you the updates or whatever it is that we're working on our Star Wars build. So that'll be kind of fun. Looks like a lot of people are starting to call it a night here. I think I'm going to do the same thing, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. I know it was it can get kind of boring for those of it that already have worked with this stuff, but this is all in an effort to try to help somebody out there that might not have done this before, and now there's be a little video segment there that they can reference and use for doing the wiring on this thing. And I hope a lot of people start working with it. It's pretty cool. It doesn't cost you that much, and you can have a little extra fun with your model, creating your own sound effects. You can get really creative with the sounds you decide to put in there. You can edit all that stuff like we showed you last time. So it's just really something cool to get into, another part of modeling. So I think we'll call that a wrap tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I hope you guys have a nice Christmas if we don't see you before then. But like I said, don't forget, we'll be doing the Hangouts starting next Saturday night. And hopefully you'll get a chance to chat with all you guys and get caught up on all the builds that are going on. And hope you have a nice Christmas and a New Year. And we'll be back to doing regular shows like probably the first week of the New Year. And start out 2018. Looking forward to it. A lot of cool stuff to build this year. You guys take care. Good night all. And we'll see you next time. Happy modeling, everyone.